Miral brought her food and boiled water, and more for the men, and Osrith was made to sit in a straw tussock that Felim had built for her. They had last seen her as they sailed out of sight, and so Osrith indulged them their overprotective fussing. An agreement, to keep the Dee and Merce free of Norse, we summarized. And Angus then told her of their departure from Deheubarth, that Pylig had told them she wanted to remain with Hywel for a little longer, but knew something was up when she had appeared at knife point on the cliff. We tried to sail back, but a fleet of Norse came southeast from Dublin, we continued. We had to shelter around at Abergwaun. Then, we sent word to Deheubarth Fortress, but were told you had gone on a pilgrimage with Hywel and to meet you on the Dee. Osrith nodded between bites of meat and bread. It was much better than the hard loaf that Hywel had taken with him on his walk. So we sailed past Gwynedd, and were just entering the Dee when more Norse were in sight. They spotted us and gave chase, so we ended up in the Merce. Our ship is blocked, now, by Norse, with the aim of attacking Brunanburh. Angus, Eswi and Osrith looked out of the cell bars. It was Elfkin, and Osrith's heart softened to the young man, once a half-grown boy who would cry for strength to Osrith when he was no older than 12, for he was unable to keep up with the bigger warriors. They have anchored in the estuary, Elfkin told them. It's what I would do, if I were them. Give them time to consider attacking the Wirral, or go up the Merce and attack inland. Either way, the lady has a problem. She must fight, to defend her territory. Osrith got to her feet, ignoring the frowning Eswi. I am proud of the warrior you have become, Osrith told him. You all, Oshir, her quiet, watchful warrior who could unpick an enemy's strategy just by looking at the land for 3 minutes, Egelfrith. Osrith looked at him, Elfkin's older brother, and deadly behind a spear. These mercen bastards are yours, Eswi said. They are my men, Osrith told him. Every one of them has saved my life more than once. And you us, Elfrith told them. Do you know, I have known Osrith nearly 30 years. She saved my master's life when she first came to Wessex. Proud to be her deputy. He took a step to Osrith. These are your warriors from Alba? He looked across their faces. Don't look blue to me, he added. Where are your fanged teeth? What? Felim stepped beside Osrith. Your fangs? If you are Picts, do you not eat your dead? It was Angus who grabbed Felim in a bear hug and clamped a hand over his mouth. When the Pitlander stopped struggling, he let him go, slowly, in case his rage began to flare again. Elfrith, Osrith reproved. Picts do not eat their dead. Anyway, she added, but was interrupted by Felim, who pushed Eswi aside. Once. He shouted at Elfrith. Once, and it was a long time ago, and it was a battle, and, Osrith felt her mouth fall open. What? He asked, shrugging. It was Angles, after all, Northumbrians, he emphasized. There were shrugs all round as the general consensus appeared to be, as long it was the enemy, and the circumstances were desperate. It was not as bad as it sounded, and at least that one Pitlander had not evolved overhanging canine teeth to deal with being cannibals on a regular basis. Osrith settled down in the straw after that, Eswi on one side of her, Elfrith on the other side of the gate, and she did not wake until dawn the next day, with an insistent urge to pee. I need a corner, she said to Elfrith, who had seemingly been beside her all night. Her men from Alba were all asleep, and she pulled herself out of the horse's future breakfast. Your brother is here, Elfrith told her, as he unlocked the cell, escorting her beyond the outer rampart and into the green flat countryside of to the Wirral. Didn't you know? Osrith paused. She did know, Miral had said when they arrived. They walked together beyond the rampart walls. All around in every direction the sky hung low. Mist vaporized into the air and the outlines of both the northern coast of Northumbria beyond the Merce, and Gwynedd to the south were beginning to sharpen. Though it was flat, there was some privacy beyond some shacks in which boats were being stored. Tussocky salt grass tufted around them. No, she told herself. Don't think it. Don't think of him. Uthed is no longer Lord of Mercia, Osrith said, as she found a tussock and she was. Elfrith stood the other side of it, as she crouched. Blessed relief from the child within her. How does a woman cope? How do they end up with more than one? He chose another to rule, Elfrith told her. But Osrith already knew. Ethelflaed, Lady of the Mercians, she replied. And she was going to gain a settlement of her life in Mercia, a reckoning. It was a feeling she had had ever since she had fled to Alba, but the truth had to be settled. So she had come to Mercia under her own terms, and she was going to make the best use of it. Her men, under Eardwulf, had been set them up to take the blame for Ethelred's death, and had the shame of her culpability of Eardwulf's murder. Osthryth was of Mercia, and the old adage was true, reputation was all. As was independence. And she asked Elfrith about the movement. We are here, said Elfrith, smiling. Mercia won. We do not need the West Saxons, but I suspect Wessex needs us. There will be a war between us before too long, I have no doubt. It what Osrith thought herself, and she looked along the Meuse, to the northwest. Many ships were entering the narrow straits, square-rigged, striped of sail. It would be the Northmen before the West Saxons, she thought, grimly. Tell me of these Norse, she said, as they went towards the ramparts to the western side. They have raided the north coast, Elfrith told her. They do not like to be told not to use the Meuse, it has been a handy inland waterway for them for many years. As were all the rivers. Norse, Danes, they all thought of the rivers as staging posts to inside the island of Britain. Welles and Alba limited them, for the mountains narrowed rivers and made them hard to navigate. But wide, deep rivers such as the Dee, Severn, Tyne, Thames. All were ideal plunder routes. Ethelflaed speaks of gifting them land, so they do not incur further, Elfrith told her. But this is not widely known, so do not let it be said, Osrith, he added. I will not, she replied, quickly, then added, appeasement? Why not? This peninsula is defendable from Brunanburh, here, Cester. And if she can see them, she can keep a check on them. Osrith laughed, derisively. Really? As if the Norse can be kept a check on. It is appeasement, and not a strategy I would choose. But, maybe she is as clever as Alfred and has more information to play a longer game. Osrith shrugged. Then she stopped, for a man was approaching them. Elfrith stood aside. It was Aldhelm. I need to speak to you, Osrith, he told her, severely. Father Pylig has come with grave news. The lady understands you wish to stand trial. The situation is delicate. Osrith tried not to grin. Anything that made Ethelflaed uncomfortable was not altogether wrong. She could have given Osrith a little respect, and it might all have been different. But for Ethelflaed, there was only room for one woman warrior. Then it needs to be demonstrated, Osrith insisted, and Aldhelm ushered her to continue to walk with him, leaving Elfrith at the palisade gate. Or else Hywil will lose his agreement with me and will be within his rights to take me back to Deheubarth. And this is a problem because... Osrith stopped, and smoothed her shirt across her swollen stomach. Ah yes, I see, Aldhelm replied, nodding slowly. And the father is keen for his child to be born in his land? Constantine? He added. The father of this child is lost to me. Constantine's palace is a place at which I feel safe. She turned to Aldhelm, and held out her hands in defiance. But I will not return to Deheubarth. I will be damned if I am to be imprisoned when my months are past. Osrith, you might be hanged if you pursue this course. Aldhelm insisted, beating his long neck to her and hissing the words loudly. Ethelflaed will not like her husband's name being brought into this, nor Utad, Eadith, nor your role in the Mercen Guard all these years. I bet she wouldn't, Osrith thought, the idea pleasing her for a moment. I have seen Eadith, and she lost her brother due to me. Mercia lost its chance of a trial. Perhaps there would have been more stability if Eardwulf had been brought to justice. Perhaps, Aldhelm conceded, raining both hands to Osrith as if to settle her, and taking hers in his for a second. But I know about your brother, and his treatment of you. Whoever Ethelflaed brings as adjudicator might want to see your injuries. Then so be it. Osrith shot back. And she knew he was right. Whatever happened, a whole ugly mess could be uncovered, for she was entitled for it all to be heard. She had fought for Mercia for all these years without crying out for glory or lauding. What she needed was for her part in it to be settled, her guilt at Eadgilf's death to be settled. And it served two purposes if she never had to return to Deheubarth. The facts are the. Or I will try myself, she added coldly, referring to the ancient Anglish custom. Eanfrith, half-brother to Oswald and Oswy of the line of Ida, Ethelfrith's first son of a Pictish wife, was no Christian. He had put himself through self-trial against his uncle Edwin before the Battle of Heavenfield, at Gyfren, the ancient capital of Bernicia, with Cadwallon of Gwynedd as witness. And had lost. Cadwallon had had to execute his ally. Who would execute her? Osrith, though, if she had proposed that. Yet, she felt fairly sure she would be exempt most punishments because of her pregnancy. But rather fall as an honoured, trusted captain of Mercia than shirk away while Ethelfled swanned around building Burt. Wait here, Aldhelm insisted, and he took Osrith by the shoulders. The morning sun was shining weakly on her face as she agreed, and it was some time before Aldhelm returned. Ethelfled wishes to speak to you, he told her, and escorted her inside the burh and into the hall. Here it was, Osrith thought. To settle the matter, one way or another. Ethelfled could no longer ignore her role in Mercia. She will have allowed Hywel to Gian favour with her, and her men would be left in no doubt that their captain was no murderer. You wish a show trial, to relinquish yourself from a bargain with Hywel, Ethelfled said, when she finally appeared in the hall. Her face was pale, her hair braided so it looked as if it crowned her head in thick, brown plaits. She had a wearied look to her face, of one who had frequently gone to bed late and got up early. Advisers? Did she have any? Uhtred, perhaps, Aldhelm, yes. But as a queen, promising herself to her land rather than any man, she stood aloof. I do, Osrith agreed. And what was this bargain? Ethelfled asked. Peleg would have told her, but she wanted Osrith to tell her too. Examine for inconsistencies, probably. It was the role of a monarch, she had many to keep safe. But Osrith was not about to make this easier for her. If the Deheubarth king has not told you, if Father Peleg has not told you, then neither will I, Osrith told her. She glanced to one side, and saw more grey-cloaked Gwynedian warriors. If Gwynedd was here, under some sort of command from Enar Ord, did that mean Ethelfled had less of an alliance with Hywel than he had led her to believe? Or was Ethelfled shrewdly keeping both kingdoms dangling, waiting for the one with the most benefit to Mercia to reveal themselves? Aldhelm tells me that it was you who killed Lord Eadgilf from the warrior love you bore my husband, and to protect your men, Ethelfled went on. They fled to you from my estate that day because they would not be parted from you, I recall. Saltwick. She added when Osrith was unmoved. But Ethelfled was doing the trick of her father, standing immobile, face fixed, waiting. Endless waiting. Most men cracked. But Osrith could wait longer. I know the strength of bonds between warriors, it makes them act together, for the benefit of their lord. And you saw the captain. Head, Osrith supplied. And the Lady Edith, who is ... here in Brunanburh with you. She guessed. Again, correct, for although Ethelfled tried to hide her expression, she could not conceal a little crinkle around her eyes. He had slain, as he had already slain my husband. He was the one who relieved Eadgilf of the mercen ring, Osrith told her, inclining her head towards Ethelfled's hand, where the large square emerald set into its gold mount glimmered in the morning light. On the word of Edith, his sister. And I believe the penalty was that you were to leave Mercia. Yet, here you are. Here I am, Osrith agreed. By her own design. Go to Mercia, and all agreements were void? The allegation was active and she was obliged justice. Osrith knew it, Ethelfled knew it. But that was not the penalty. It is what I chose to do, to ensure shame did not fall upon my men. The Lord Uhtred had this resolved, when we were on the road. It is a pity that I bring it to you now. For that was another reason. Uhtred had been the one to dismiss the record of murder against her and her men, but Ethelfled had not dispute the convention that previous monarchs' decisions were generally upheld. Osric was being provocative, and they both knew it. But, proving it was a different matter, and Osric was asking for a public trial, so Ethelfled had to be seen to deliver justice. "Congratulations on your coronation, Lady Ethelfled," she added. "I understand you had been traveling to Wallis with the lords, the Mormars." She struggled over the word, of King Constantine? And that the Lord Uhtred had detained them, thinking them to be Norse. "Indeed, lady," Osric told her, trying to make the word lady sound as genuine as possible. Edhelm stepped next to Osric, and bowed his head. Ethelfled turned her head to her advisor and nodded briefly. "They are model prisoners, from what Mierald tells me," Aldhelm told her. "I should have them vouch for you." She nodded to Aldhelm, who left the hall. Neither woman followed his egress, rather, stared at one another, and Osric noticed Ethelfled take in Osric's bump. "While we wait for your men, I have a letter for King Constantine." She extended a long arm, as if trying hard to be as far away from Osric as possible. "What it proposes requires you to return to Alba as quickly as ever you can. And, to do as you agreed to the King of Gwynedd," Ethelfled added. So, she knew of it. Then, Osric thought. Spies. Like any self-respecting leader of a nation, Ethelfled of Mercia would have spies everywhere. "I am willing to make a tripartite alliance with Alba and Strathclyde, to prevent Northumbrian and Norse incursions." With Dyfnwyl assured of an heir, he may think it less important to send Norse south with a pocket of silver for their trouble. "Like the Norse in the Merse?" Osric asked. "Sitri Ronvald Brider." And that gave Osric much delight then to see the Lady of the Mersons start, for Osric was instantly resentful that Ethelfled knew of King Anarord's arrangement with her. There were Gwynedd warriors in Brunanburh now, though, Osric told herself, and once you knew about Owain ap Dyfnwyl, it was the next logical step to reunite him with his father. Perhaps Ethelfled's compass was veering to the northern Wallin kingdom rather than that of Hywel, after all. "I will speak to your men," Ethelfled said, when the silence had lingered between them for an inordinate amount of time. Aldhelm had been sent to get them, but they had not yet arrived. "My Pictish man, lady? My Strathclydian man? Or my Gaelish comrade?" Osric asked. "Or are you referring to my Mercian warriors, who are condemned should I not stand trial?" No captain would let blame fall to the shoulders of his men, she added, enjoying Ethelfled's expression. "Or do you mean the Gwynedian guard who are here, to whom I am kin, or—" Ethelfled started, and took a step towards her. Osric froze, though for a moment, she expected that the lady was going to hit her. But she didn't. Instead, Ethelfled regained her poise and looked at Osric without expression. "All who will speak for you, yes," she replied, with one swift nod. "Of the Mersons, I will choose one," she broke off. And Osric turned to see Aldhelm. Beside him, chins out, proud of stance, were Felim, Angus, and Eswi. She smiled when she was them, and Eswi asked her in Gaelish, what was going in. Osric told him she was giving herself up for an alleged crime, and the lady had asked them to be character witnesses. She then translated for Angus, and then for Felim, who nodded between themselves when they understood language. If you had writing or if you had language, you had power. Osric did not know whether Ethelfled knew that she spoke Danish and Norse, but now she would know she commanded Pictish, Cymbric, Gaelish, and again, Osric noticed with satisfaction Ethelfled's surprise at this. "Of your men, Aldhelm, would you suggest Mierald to be the best of them to speak in Osric Lackland's favour?" "Certainly. Osric was his captain, under his command. If anyone can advocate for her character it will be him." Was I? Indeed, Osric thought again. Yet more information to disquiet Lady Ethelfled. While she was making herself comfortable in Saltwick, Osric was actually doing some of the muscle work to make the land safe. And she knew it now, and could not take Osric's service to Mercia away from her. "How will I communicate with these lords?" Ethelfled asked. "Apart from Osric herself, do we know anyone who can speak their language?" "Gaelish, for example. A chill passed over Osrith, then. Please God, no. Not him. Ethelfled would ask around, ask Uhtred, who could not fail to come up with the same candidate. But her horror was abated when Eswi said, I can speak Saxon. And I can translate for my lords, he told them. So, I will discuss with the lords, Ethelfled concluded. And you are to discuss with the adjudicator at your trial, she added, flicking Osrith a look. She was to get one after all. Osrith's heart began to rise again. Father Oswald will preside, Ethelfled continued. He will need your testimony. His judgment of your character will be absolute, and the need for publicity will be minimal, she added. And behind Ethelfled a cassocked man appeared, and was standing quietly beside the lady. At the mention of a priest, Osrith wondered whether it would be Osferth, although he had no monastery, nor bishopric now. But no. Ethelfled would need the judgment of a man with standing. It would be a joyless man who would judge her for her pregnancy and her warmongering, and would conclude accordingly, no doubt, Osrith thought, and she steeled herself for the word fight that was to come. Be persuasive, not brittle, Osrith told herself. Do not challenge him, or insult him. You catch more bees with honey than with vinegar. Osrith looked again, and again at the joyless priest Ethelfled had chosen, forcing her lips not to break forth the joy. It was her nephew who stood before her, Father Oswald, Bishop of Cester.